Today I'd like to talk about value. What is value? The dictionary definition of value is the lightness or darkness of color or grayscale. This definition of value is correct, but when we study value as a design principle, value has an expanded definition. Value in design is either high contrast or its keys. There are people, these are just some facts about value, there are people who are physically unable to perceive color, meaning they see the entire world in varying tones of gray. People with this color deficit can function in life with minimal difficulties. Interestingly, there are thousands of shades of gray, yet the human eye normally only discerns about 40. To put value into perspective, many copiers that you use in the office or wherever only capture about 8 to 10 shades of gray. So to understand the whole concept of value, I like to also teach a little bit of color theory. And these are the 4 concepts that you need to understand. First of all color is affected by whatever colors surround it. If you have a warm colors are things like yellow, red, orange. If you want to make it appear warmer, you need to surround it with cooler colors, for example, blue, violet, or green. The same is true the opposite way. If you want to make a cooler color look cooler, surround it with warmer colors. 3, every color has value. And 4, after images, we learn to tune them out, but they're there. So the first 2 concepts. All colors are affected by the colors that surround them. To make a warm color appear warmer, surrounded by a cooler color. And you can see that some of these colors are actually vibrating. Values are also affected by the values that surround them. So it's not just color, it's the value as well. Value in color. Every color has value. If you take the color out of a design, you get the value, and what this is called is inherent value. So, after image. After image is defined as an image that continues to appear in one's vision after exposure to the original image has ceased. For the following exercises, you will need a timer. I suggest pausing the video on the next slide, setting the timer, and following the instructions below. In the next few slides, you should get after image effect. It's fleeting, lasting perhaps just a matter of seconds. Some people can't see after images. Don't worry if that's your case. After images happen partly because the eye, the cones and the rods, they get tired and from staring at the color. If you don't see an after image, it probably means that it just takes your eyes longer to become tired. So don't get concerned over that. So here are the instructions. Once I flip over to the next slide, I want you to put your timer on for 30 seconds and stare at the red stripe on the left-hand side. Try not to blink. Keep staring at it. Perhaps staring at the edges of that rectangle will help. When the timer goes off, immediately stare at the circle, which is on the right-hand side. And as I said before, what you will see will be fleeting. It will only last for a matter of a few seconds. But think about what that is when you see it. And I'm going to go over to the next slide, and I suggest you pause and set your timer. What did you see when you looked at the black dot? What you should have seen was a ghost of the rectangle you stared at, but it should appear to be greenish or bluish green. This demonstrates how each color is affected by the color that surrounds it. Next, let's see how warm colors surrounding cool colors make warm colors appear warmer and cool colors appear cooler. Again, we're going to do the same thing that we did with the last one. You'll need to set your timer for 30 seconds. When I flip over to the next slide, I want you to look at the red stripe on the left-hand side. After the timer goes off in 30 seconds, instead of a black dot, you will actually see a green rectangle, and I'd like you to look at that. Pay particular attention to what happens in the area where the after image overlaps the green rectangle. Okay, so I'm going to the next slide. What did you see when you looked at the green rectangle? What you should have seen was a ghost of the rectangle, but it should have appeared greenish to blue-greenish, and where it overlapped the existing green rectangle, the ghost rectangle becomes brighter. This demonstrates how warm colors appear warmer when surrounded with cooler colors and vice versa. So for the last after image, we're going to look at grayscale. Again, the same instructions as we've been doing all along. This time on the left-hand side, you'll see a black box that has a white box in the center. Stare at that, try not to blink, keep staring at it for 30 seconds. And then once your timer goes off, look at the dot and pay attention to what you see. What did you see when you looked at the black dot? You should have seen the black and white shape that you stared at in reverse. The black will appear to be a bright white, and the white will appear to be a dark gray. You may even have seen the edges of the after image shape have a dark outline. Doesn't happen for everybody, but it does for some. What this demonstrates is that after images happen with black and white and grayscale, in addition to color. It's more dramatic with black and white opposed to values that are similar in shade. Black and white after images add to the energy level of high contrast value. So let's go back to value now. As mentioned earlier, the human eye sees 40 different values of shades of gray. When using a grayscale, I like to use a 10-step grayscale, with 10 being black and 1 being white. Value to set up a mood, feeling, and energy level. When I teach the principles of design, I discuss how to apply words into visual art. As professional visual artists, you will work with clients. Clients use words to explain what they want to be communicated in the design you're creating for them. You need to figure out what the main mood or feeling is and the energy level for that final project, and it should be based on your client's needs. An immediate way to set up mood or energy level is through the type of value that you use. The body language of visual art. One way to tap into the visual mood is to think of the elements of art as body language. Experts don't agree on the numbers, but they claim that we rely on more than 60% of body language when communicating with one another. In other words, we unconsciously rely more on what we see when communicating rather than the words that we hear. So look at this image over in the corner. Imagine this is a couple and they're saying sweet, loving words in gentle voices to one another. By reading the body language, you realize that the words don't reflect the actual feelings they seem to be expressing. The same is true in the visual arts. The visual elements should support the message that you wish to communicate. So we'll start with high contrast. High contrast value is strictly black and white, or mainly black and white, with a limited amount of other values. In this example, the values are being used are strictly black and white, and they're roughly 50-50, 50% black, 50% white, with no additional values. Think of this as, this is actually a very large painting. Think of this painting as being a huge puzzle, and you have each piece of the puzzle is either black or white, and you need to sort out those puzzle pieces and put them in the black pile or the white pile. So with that kind of a scenario, 50% of this piece would be black and 50% of this would be white. Look at the energy that's going on in this piece as well. A lot of it's based on the value. High contrast, another form of high contrast, is where the majority of the values are black and white, but there are some limited other values. But the black and the white must remain the two dominant values. Obviously, they can't be that 50-50, but they should be, both individually should be a fair amount of the overall piece. So again, if we were looking at this photo and we were going to sort it out like puzzle pieces, we would have a pile for black, a pile for white, and then we would have a smaller pile of other values. Those other values in this case would be values like here in the hair, the cheek, some of the shadows in here. But the dominant values in this are black and white. So high contrast value, energy levels and feelings. High contrast has a lot of energy, which can create a lot of movement. There are additional compositional elements that can be used to create movement, such as rhythm, texture, high energy shapes, but you can create movement strictly using high contrast value. Consider how after images are created by major contrasts of pure black and white value and how it adds to that energy level of the value as well. The types of feelings that can be achieved when using high contrast value are electric, intense, chaotic. Note that these descriptive words are high energy words. These words are not the only words that can apply to high contrast. If you need a lot of energy in a design, high contrast won't let you down. The second type of value that you can use are keys. Keys are a great design tool to set up a feeling. They come in high, medium, or low. The energy level of keys is usually low. A lot of movement across the composition is not the main criteria when working with keys. If you need a high energy piece, better stick with high contrast. And of course, everything that I teach you, there are exceptions. But we're going to talk about the rules, so to speak, today. Often you will only find high keys or low keys in most design books. The approach when eliminating the middle key is a bit different than the approach I discuss here. I'll be working with the medium key as I often see it used in many paintings, and as I'm a painter, that's near and dear to me. Keys have less energy than high contrast value. This is because they have a limited dominant value range. Keys have a dominant value range, but there also needs to be a limited amount of some other values in it. It's important to include some other values to add areas of definition. Without this definition, the value runs the risk of being flat, giving the eye nothing to latch onto. The formula that I suggest for keys is 75% of the dominant values and 25% or less of the other values. So, why do you want some other values? Well, here's a good example of a piece that looks flat. You need to include some limited other values to create small areas of definition. Without these small areas of definition, the value becomes flat, leaving nothing of interest for the eye to lock onto. When this happens, the viewer spends little time looking through the piece and moves on. Essentially, in this piece, the only things that kind of stand out are the few lights that are showing right here in this fairly dark building. But there's really not enough going on for us to really become interested and want to spend some time on this image. So let's start with the first key, which is a high key. The dominant value range, our range is 1 through 4. Now remember, 1 is white, 10 is black. So 1 through 4, these are very light values, okay? Feelings often associated with high keys: sunny, floating, happy. Now, when you look at this piece with the color stripped out, I think it makes it easier to understand that the values are dominantly very light. And you can also see how they have created some areas of, quote, other values. We've got some darker values here, and how that helps to create a gentle movement through the picture plane. Here's an example of a high key being used in interior design. If a client says, I need to have a kitchen that feels bright and sunny, well, this is one way to go about it, is to use a high key. A medium key. A medium key is, the main values are values 4 through 7. Feelings associated with a medium key are uncertain, foggy, sad. Seeing this piece, which is using warm and cool colors, the grayscale version lacks the vibrancy. This is due to the warm and cool colors affecting one another. So that's getting a little bit into color theory. But just to go back a moment and look at the other slide, actually the figures stand out fairly well. But when you see it in grayscale, it doesn't feel as successful. So this is just the colors doing their job. Another medium key. Now this is a movie that came out many years ago called Blade Runner. And just to kind of set up the scene for you, at this point, a very young Harrison Ford is trying to sort out if this is possibly a robot, or if this is a dangerous, what they call replicant, that has been known to kill. So you can see that they're using this medium key, and it helps kind of to set up the mystery of what's going on here. And here we go when we see it in grayscale. A low key. A low key is mainly values 7 through 10. Feelings associated with this are mysterious, moody, creepy. This is a nice example of seeing how the small areas of other values, how a key needs this. Because there are very light values in the sky edging around the trees, we're able to make out what this is. We can also tell by the reflection in the water that this is in fact water. Okay, think of it like this. If this entire piece was all in this value range right in here, we would have a very difficult time telling what's going on in the piece, and there would be no movement. So this is a nice example of how you need to have a little bit of some other values in a piece to create interest and create some gentle movement. Here's another nice piece. This piece is actually by an Indiana artist, and it's at the Art Museum. The painter wisely applied other values, in this case the lighter values, to help create a focal point. This is actually a painting of Meridian Street. Now, I really like to look at this piece and talk about thinking outside of the box. This is another low key. But what's interesting to me, and this is by a Chicago artist, Ed Paschke, is that he's playing with you. If you were to describe the subject matter, it's a smiling person. It is creepy. It's creepy for many reasons, but he interestingly is using very bright colors. Now, these are colors that are often associated with children's books that are aiming at kids ages 2 through 5. So they're trying to invite children to want to come in and read and enjoy the books. So he's using these very bright colors, but by adding the low key to the piece, he's also reinforcing the creepy. And let me show you how dramatically, those colors, as bright as they actually are fairly dark in value. Now, not all of them, but a fair amount of them are. So whenever I show artwork, I never ask people to look at them and say, I like that piece, I don't like that piece. I try to use them as good examples of the different concepts that I'm teaching. Some people get really disturbed by Paschke's work. I personally like his work, but I really like and hope that you'll all at least see how you can take these concepts and have them work in different ways for you. So in all these examples, the composition is not strictly restricted to the dominant value range, but includes some limited other values. High energy movement across the composition is not the main criteria for creating these types of moods. You do want some movement, but not like high energy movement. So the following slides, I'm going to ask you to identify whether you think it's high contrast or high, medium, or low key. Now, this is a video, so if I'm showing this in the classroom, I'm actually going to pause on each one, but in the meantime, I'm just going to go through these. So. If you're doing an assignment for me and you choose to do a high key, please don't do something like this. There's a little bit of some other values in here, but basically this is just a line drawing. If you do a high key, please make sure to include a fair amount of values 2 through 4. Technically, you could call this a high key, but it doesn't show me that a person understands that. So